So we want our bar chart to look something like that. Speaking for the benefit of the camera now. We're going to be drawing rectangles, we're going to be filling them, we're going to be adding text, and looking at it also what we need to be able to do. Move a little bit over for the spacers. So if I start here, this makes it look like I could draw as easy as going like that. But I don't really want to do that. I also want to fill in the bottom. I want my rectangles to be complete like that. And then add a little bit of space. So I'm going to, while I'm writing up here, write width, W for how wide it is, and T for how tall it is. So if I want to draw this rectangle, and then add a little bit of spacer to it, I'm probably going to need another variable called space or something like that, you know, so that we could change the width of it if we wanted to. If it didn't look good when we drew it, you know, when we ran the program the first time, we could change it. This width here could be a constant because we want each bar to be the same width. So the spacer and how wide each thing is, these could be constants that we defined up at the top of the program. Now I'm using a word that doesn't really exist in Python. In other languages, a constant is a variable that once you define, it cannot be changed. Here I'm just going to define it as a variable that you declare above all the above all the functions that they can all share. So we're going to make these variables, you know, up above the rest of our code so that we can specify how wide to go and how much space we need to draw between them. So looking at it again, how am I going to draw this? What are the sequence of commands? I want somebody to write these down and then read them back to me. Starting here, I want to go east. Just call it W for now. I want to go east, W number of pixels. Then I want to go north, W number of pixels. Then I want to go west, W number of pixels. And I lied, it wasn't W going north, it was the height. Let's call that H, T for tall. Yeah. Okay, starting again. We're going to go east, W. We're going to go north, tall. We're going to go west, W. We're going to go south, tall. That'll put us back to here. We could do our fill at that point. But then we need to get over here, right? Because it's not going to do any good to just draw a rectangle in the same place over and over. So what should we do now that we're here to get to here and then to here? Yeah, I could go east, the number of pixels, the W, and then I could draw a gap. I could even turn the pin off while drawing the gap. But that would be going east, the smaller number, the spacer. Okay, so tack those last ones on. And now I'm going to ask you to read them back to me. One person who wrote them down, and somebody else can be correcting them. Okay, now this isn't going to work. This is just kind of starting our program off so that I can remember those instructions that I just gave. So I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to do save as. I'm going to go up, save it out of my Python directory. I think I'll call it bar graph. I know I'm going to need some variables. The spacer, I think I want to set equal to 10 so that each bar is separated by 10 empty pixels. And I want the width of each bar to be 50. You know, and we can change those if our graph doesn't look good. Why don't I lower this? Now we may as well, while we're here, create our turtle. How do we create a turtle? We have to add the line import turtle up at the top. And let's create our turtle, but instead of calling it T, let's call it Leo for Leonardo the Ninja Turtle. Leo is equal to turtle with a lowercase t, dot, turtle with an uppercase T, parentheses in parentheses. And let's give Leo some attributes, like let's set his pen size. Leo.pen size, 3's a nice width. Leo.color, let's make him blue with a yellow fill. And Leo.speed, let's make him go pretty fast so we don't have to sit there and watch. You know, watch, it won't take as long. All right, now we have our two constants. I'm calling these constants. This is the gap between bars, and this is the width of each bar. So when I draw my bar, I'm going to actually do the drawbar function first, even though it's not going to work because we don't have our functions that go east, west, and north and south defined. Okay, so I'm going to call it drawbar. And what were my directions?
East.
Yeah, go east. Wait, we need to pass in a value. We need to pass in how tall the bar is going to be. Okay, so we're going to go east for the width number of pixels. Then what do?
North.
We go north, tall number of pixels. And spacing doesn't matter. I add spaces up here to try to make it easy for y'all to read because some of y'all are 50 feet away. Then what?
West.
West, the width number of pixels. And then south, tall number of pixels. And then what was next?
East.
We got to add the finish the bottom. Let's end our fill here, leo.endFill underscore, before we draw that bar along the bottom. However, that implies that we should have started our fill. So above that call to east, we need to insert a line that says Leo underscore begin fill. Leo dot begin underscore fill. Then we draw our box, then we end our fill. Then we need to go east. Again, how wide our bar is. And then we need to go east for the gap. And then down in main, we're going to need to call drawbar a few times. I want to draw a bar that's 100 pixels wide. I want to draw a bar that's 200 pixels wide. Excuse me, tall, not wide. And then one that's halfway between each 250. Okay, so this code is kind of cool, but it's not really cool because we haven't written these little functions for east, north, west, and south. Also, there may be times when we want to pick up the pen so that we're not leaving a line. But we could do that, you know, before and after we call this east.gap. Maybe we don't care. Maybe we'll leave the line there just to make this simpler. So I could run this, but it's broken because these east, north, west, and south functions don't work. We haven't written them yet. But it's pretty easy to add them. We just use some defs. We could define them above our function, or we could define them below our function. I'm going to define them below our function, but above main. So east, for x number of pixels, def space east, parentheses x, colon. We want to set our heading east. And in this coordinate system, unlike real life where north is 0, So Leo dot set heading 0 is due east in this setting. And then we're going to go forward, Leo dot FD, X number of pixels. Now just as a reminder, I'm going to put a little note here. East equals 0, north equals 90. You don't have to add this comment, but this will help us write these functions. West equals 180. And south equals 270 in this coordinate system. That makes writing the rest of the functions real easy. Define going north the same way. Just set your heading to the number for north and then go forward that many pixels. South looks very similar. You set your heading to go south. Leo dot set heading and the direction for south is 270. And then go forward. Now I've done them all but west. The degrees for going west is 180, and then we want to send Leo forward X number of pixels. I could space this out, more to make it easier to read, but I'm also trying to leave it on screen for you. Now I had planned on making all sorts of mistakes to show us the act of fixing these problems, but I haven't made any intentional mistakes so far. That doesn't mean that there's not any. All right, remember that on every function definition you have to have a colon. I forgot to put a colon after my west function, but everywhere you have a DEF, you have to have a colon at the end of that line of code. All right, I have another bug. Aha. I called it gap somewhere and I called it space somewhere else, so I'm going to have to correct that. I think I like the word gap better, so up at the very top of the program I'm going to change the word space to gap. I'll do that in a minute when I'm confident that more people have caught up typing. But you can do that already if you've typed this stuff. Scroll up to the top and change the word gap to space. I better do it now. I can't test it anymore without doing that. So since I called it gap in one place and space in another, in Drawbar I called it gap. At the very top I called it space. So go up to the top and where you see space is equal to 10, change it to gap is equal to 10. Then just, come back down and finish working. Alrighty, there's a few more enhancements we could add, but that is actually working. Alright, these east, north, south, and west functions are actually pretty simple. I'm going to move that over to this side, and I'm going to scroll back up to the drawbar function. And I'm going to try to get both of them on screen. And as a reminder, below east, north, south, and west, we need the main code, which draws a bar of 100, then it draws a bar of 200, and then it draws a bar of 150. I never thought of this before, but yeah, we can actually get two sets of code on the screen, huh? I mean, 2 pages worth. Pretty close to it. I'm gonna delete some lines though, because if I want all this on one page without y'all having to stand up to read it. Okay. Sorry. There we go. Go ahead and get that working. I'll wander around and help correct typos. Where'd you go? Yours go.
Yeah, that's right.
Cool. Excellent. Well, it'd be kind of neat if we started over here. Remember how you could do that? Just think about that. We had a relocate function at one point, but what did it really involve? It just involved turning the pin off. Pin up, yeah, and then moving it with set.
Yeah, I think someone must have like settings because like whenever I could enter or I could use it
Yeah.
started like way out here.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
Not cool. Anyways, I'll go do that. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, who's got typos? The bag had a much harder time seeing me.
I don't have a typo. I just
Say that again? Greg got one of those. Greg got down here.
I don't know.
So this is, we got two?
No, one of those needs to be with, or.
Oh, I see what you're doing.
That's, yeah.
So this is with?
The other one's with.
Oh, shit, okay. That's it.
It's one of them. It didn't change anything.
Nope, didn't.
Because it didn't even get that far yet. So I want to make spaces, not that it matters, because he did the spaces, but. It's terrible time.
That's doing exactly what you told her to do. Yeah, I'm kidding, but yeah, whatever. I apologize for not working.
It shows up at me. Oh, okay.
Don't worry, you're gonna get full credit for it. Alright. Alright, so how'd you get yours with the green background and all that? Did you type in the one from the,
Oh, no. Attribute error, model turtle.
okay, yeah,
No
that's
attribute.
pretty good, exactly. Good job. You got your autograph going? You got yours? Yes, sir. Uh-huh. Well, we can't make it blank because we have to pass them if they're equal. But you don't have to call it edge, you could call it thread, you could call it pixels, yeah. As long as you use the same name there and there.
Alright, I didn't know, cause I know like sometimes we leave it blank, like up here turtle, turtle.
Right, that's because that function doesn't take any data to be passed in. But we wouldn't know how many pixels to go forward if we didn't pass in a number for that.
Okay, and it's drawing the four from here from width, correct?
Right, right, exactly.
So whatever it pulls width is 50, so it moves it to 50.
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
Alright, I was trying to understand the
Yeah,
logic of it.
very good question. Okay, cool. All right, Jenny won the prize because hers refuses to fill with a color, it always fills it with white. So if anybody else gets that to happen, you also earn bonus points. No, I'm kidding, but it's just very odd. All right, so some questions came up. Did everybody get it working? I'm sorry, I came and sat back down. Be aggressive, demand help. Squeaky wheel gets the mechanic. Right. Go ahead and run it.
Keep getting that line 6. Oh, now it's the line 1 and line 6. It was
Turtle has no attribute named screen. Go ahead and show me the code again.
his work. It's drip.
This probably means that there's a function called, that there's a program called Turtle in that directory. Do file open. Scroll down and look to see if there's one called Turtle. Yeah,
Oh,
there
there
it
it
is.
is, yeah.
Okay, just rename that to like, just click it and wiggle it, or yeah, or choose rename, and call it Turtle 1 or Turtle 8 or something like that. Yeah, Now this one
The same
will
thing happened to me.
yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, now you can just close it, it's already been renamed.
Oops.
Well, that's cool.
All right.
Not quite what we want though, let's take a look and see what's going on. North is 90, south is 270, so change that one to 90.
Okay. There we go.
Cool deal.
I'm out.
Alrighty, the only thing that we haven't added that is on theirs, I think ours looks better, is the text description of how tall that number is. But a couple of other questions. Somebody asked why we had to have X here. And it's a very good question, because half the time we don't put anything between the parentheses. Like begin fill, we didn't put a parentheses there. Turtle, we didn't put, we did put parentheses, but we didn't put X there. Why did we put X in our east, north, south, and west functions? Somebody tell me what that does.
Gives it a value.
Yeah, it gives it a value. What is that X actually called? What's the technical programming term for it?
Variable.
Very good, but even more specifically, it's hard to say, specifically, it's a parameter or a parameter variable. And the reason we need that is because otherwise we wouldn't know how many pixels to draw. We want this function to draw a line that's a certain number of pixels long. If we weren't passing in anything, like if we deleted that, then we wouldn't have any idea of how far to go east. And we could say, okay, I'm going to guess, I'm going to always draw, the width of the bar, but sometimes we drew the width of the gap. So we need to pass in the value. However, the name X isn't magical. We could have called it pixels as long as it was called the same here. We could have called it Fred, as long as it was the same inside the function. Whatever, we could have called it length as long as it's the same here. Get the idea? The name of it just has to match. The name is not magical. The only thing you need to make sure is that your name doesn't match a keyword like DEF, or import. If you put the word import there, that's not going to work. There are some keywords that you can't use as variables, and those are the words that actually define the language, like import and if, and, or, not, all those words. Okay. Hopefully I haven't broken my program, but I did show you that you can rename these parameters, these parameter variable names. Let's add the text to the top. So here we go. Here's our drawbar. We want to add our text when we get all the way to the top and then that corner. So where would we put that? We want to put it when we've gone north. What would happen if we added it right after we went north? I'm going to add on the command right after our call to north. Leo dot, and I've forgotten the command, excuse me. Oh well, I guess I could look at our textbook over here. It's right, okay. Leo dot right, and I'm going to write how tall it is. There we go. Now this is not actually where the code needs to be. I'm showing you me making a mistake. Okay, that's not real cool, right? What did we do? What did I do wrong?
Really small.
Well, besides the fact that it's really small, it'll look okay on your screen except for your Alienware computer where it's going to be microscopic. Okay, but I wanted it to be more in the middle. So what did I do wrong? I did it after I went north, not after I did west. So I need to move that right command to after the call to west. So I'm going to go back to my code and do that. I'm going to delete the line that says leo.write, and I'm going to move it to after the call to west rather than the call to north, and it will look a little bit better. We could probably also change the text size. Let's see if we can do that. To do that, I'm going to have to Google. So that's what I did, is I added leo.write, and I told it to print the number that was passed in, the variable. Okay, so I'm going to Google up set text size Python turtle. Google is always your friend. Okay, there we go. We can embed a font size command in it. This is going to make the write command look really complicated, but we can handle it. After the word tall, but still inside the parentheses, we're going to add this command. Font is equal to Arial, like that, comma 8, comma normal. That means like non-italics or something like that. Let me make sure that works, though, before we get too wiggy about it. Now, that's just the same size. I'm going to double the size of the font and see if that helps. Much better. Okay, I'm pretty happy with our bar chart program. The only thing I could think of doing next would be to make it so that when we were drawing the gap, the pin was up rather than down. So we didn't draw that gap, and also to turn off the turtle at the end so that we didn't have the little, the cursor, the shape. We could add those enhancements, but that's really, just kind of gravy. So what did we do here? We demonstrated you creating variables before the functions. And I call these constants, but these really aren't constants because you can't add the constant keyword like you can in some languages. But we defined a variable called gap. We defined a variable called width. We also created a variable called Leo. We could set the background color too. His chart had a background color of green, but I'm not going to do that. Okay, and then we defined a function called Drawbar where we passed in a parameter called tall, which indicated how tall the bar was supposed to be. We also defined some functions that supposedly, in my mind, made it easier to draw rather than issue dot left and dot right commands and have to remember what direction our turtle is going. Just did east, north, south, and west. Oh, the last thing I wanted to do is when I run my turtle program, it starts in the middle of the screen, right? What if we had a long bar graph with 6 or 8 or 10 numbers? We really should probably start over here. At one time, we had a relocate function. I'm going to see if I can remember what relocate looked like. I'm going to type add a relocate function right below the west command. And it's going to be called relocate, and it's going to take an x parameter and a y parameter. And to relocate, what you do is you lift the pin up, and then you set your x position to the x that was passed in, you set your y position to the y value that was passed in. So it's set x, parentheses x, set y, and then we put our pin back down. And so in main, let's relocate ourselves to like negative 200 comma 0 or negative 200 comma 100. I don't know, you know, something like that. We're moving ourselves to the bottom corner of the screen a little bit there. Let me run it, make sure I didn't put any typos in it. Yeah. So we could add more calls to the bar graph. So just add a couple more calls to the bar, you know, to the graph. Add like 6 or, you know, 3 more calls so that you're drawing 6 bars. You pick the numbers, I don't care. Yeah, yeah. Or you could add 6 bars, but you might have to change the width of each one to get them to fit. I'll do that. I'm just going to copy and paste these so that I have 9 bars. Whoopsie. And I want to see if it still fits. Just because I'm curious. Bless you. 9 goes off the screen for me. 8 would have fit, but I could move. I could relocate further to the left if I wanted to get 9. So you could mess with those settings, you know, and draw as many bars as you wanted to. You could even get all wiggy and make it decide, based on the number of bars you were going to draw, the width of the bars and how far over it should start. You know, you could do a whole bunch of calculations like that. We're not going to change it to do that. Then the program actually starts becoming pretty large. Okay.
I tried changing the font.
Pardon me?
I said I tried changing the font, but it stays the same.
Let me see.
I was gonna see if I could change to this in the console, but it didn't work.
You can look at the list of available fonts, and this is what's
So I was just trying.
Excellent, good too.
Well, you may have to spell it exactly right. You may have to have a couple of L and then capital L. I can't tell you which fonts are supported, which aren't.
I was just trying to see what would work.
Made a nice big font, but you may not have chosen the one that you wanted. Hieroglyphs. Alrighty guys, let's make a Dropbox for this and submit it, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about functions, and we're going to try to wrap up the idea of functions today. And yeah, it's totally cool to add stuff to your programs that I didn't ask for. So some people saw from the assignment how to change the color of the background, and you could do that. So when you're waiting for me to wander around, you know, you can always try to think of little enhancements. So there's our Dropbox. Go ahead and give me your script. I need to put the dates on both of these. About the bar graphs, because that's what your assignment over the weekend is going to be. So out in content, under lecture notes, there should be one called a lecture note called sample flowcharts. And remember, it's always easier to view these things if you actually download them rather than view them in D2L. So I'm going to click download, open them up. Okay, so this looks like a flowchart that we might have drawn on Monday. I don't remember if we did one with both an if and an else or not. But we put our pill shape up at the top, it says stop. We put our pill shape at the bottom, it says, excuse me, start and stop. Anytime we display something or ask for input, we use the tilted boxes. Here's what our decision looks like. If it's an if statement, go ahead and put if in the diamond. I don't care if you space it out as cleanly as this is done, but if you want to add a character turn in the middle of your typing, hit Control and hit Enter. And then for the code that it gets executed by the if side, put yes or true there, and then put what it's supposed to do. On the other side, you could put no or false, but I like to see the word else there, just because we actually type in else in our program. And this is what happens if that's not true. Then we print a done message. So this is a flow chart if you have an if and an else. Here's a flow chart if you don't have an else. What's the difference? There's only one difference. Somebody tell me what's different about it.
No, it doesn't go to the left, no, it's down.
Yeah, it doesn't go to the left, it just goes straight down and there's no code there. So we know we don't have to actually add any else code to our program. We don't have to type the word else. Okay, so, and this one is what's known as a change conditional, or when you have a whole bunch of if, elifs, elifs. And I know we did a program like this, where we printed you had to make an A or a B, you know, or a C, or you'd fail. I'm pretty sure we did that. So, take a look at this, because your homework involves drawing a program like this. Start, you know, input your grade. If the grade is greater than or equal to 90, do something. And then it becomes more of a mystery about how you're going to hook up all the lines when you have all these many options. And if that's not true, then come down and do elif, grade is greater than or equal to 80. If that's true, print a B. Elif, if grade is greater than or equal to 70. Print C. And then you probably need some little tiny connector down there at the bottom. So use a circle. It doesn't have to be a small circle. Just put something down there that all the lines hook back up to. And then notice that for the final case, if none of these were true, if they didn't make an A, B, or a C, I made the else jut off to the left, just like we did on the other side. And that's just for kind of thematic consistency. If every time I draw a flow chart, I make trues go off to the right, like we were indenting our code, then I can also remember that else, you know, it's real easy for me to spot that I'm going to be tacking on an else statement there. So let me upload the homework. So out in the Dropbox is homework assignment 5. You have a week to do it. Refresh your Dropbox if you want to look at it right now. Bless you. Here's what you have to do. Wait, our attachments are gone. Let me add our attachments. All right. Refresh your Dropbox again. The attachments are there. Okay, here's what the assignment is. It's just some code that I want you to flowchart. Homework. Draw a flowchart for this program using Visio, which is a flowcharting program that comes with Microsoft Office, or Lucidchart. Upload the PDF or a screenshot or a Visio document to the Dropbox. Now this is all stuff that we did on Monday. If you weren't here on Monday, then watch the video, because there was also a short assignment on Monday about drawing flowcharts. So the program's supposed to ask for their age. Print enter age. It gets the input, and then it converts it to a float. You can combine these into a single box. You could just say input age, you know, in your parallelogram. If the age is less than 18, we print too young. Elif, the age is greater than 99, we print too old. We're ageist. Else, print just right, and then print a done message. So it's really a pretty small flow chart. All you need is a box for the print statement, another box for the input. You need an if diamond, a print. You need an elif diamond, a print. You need an else, and a print, and then finally a print at the bottom. And then put a pill shape up at the top and the bottom, and you're done. So hopefully that won't be too hard. But if you have any questions over it, then you can ask on Monday. All right, let's finish our lecture. We're going to jump ahead to chapter 6. Seeing as how we have 20 whole valuable minutes, we shan't waste them. Okay, this is a chapter called Fruitful Functions. It's good to read. It shows some things we haven't used, like lists and the ABS function, stuff like that. Well, we may have talked about lists. But the idea behind this code, or this chapter, is that when you're doing software development, you write your functions, but then you need to do something called debugging, and you need to do something called unit tests. Now you know what debugging is. You've heard that word before. But what a unit test is it's a way to make sure that the code is actually working. So you might want to follow along. I'm going to make a new file, and I'm going to add some functions here. So I'm going to save it, and I'm going to call it test. That's good enough. So I want my first function to be called cube because it's going to take the cube of a value. You have to pass in a variable. And so I'm going to say result is equal to x times x. Now honestly, we know that that's not the formula for a cube. I'm actually making intentional mistakes to aid in the debugging process. And then I need to return x. Then I'm going to have another one called square root. Nah, square root would be too hard to debug. I'm going to make another one called add, which takes two values, x and y. X comma y takes two parameters. The result is equal to x plus y. And then it returns the result. I'm going to make another one called minus, and I'm just going to copy and paste this code right here. So again, there's a problem. The only one of these functions which actually is written correctly is add, because that's not how you calculate the cube of a value. That's not how you subtract one thing from another with a plus sign. No. Okay, so now I'm going to write a function called unit test. What a unit test is when you test each function and you print out an error message if it doesn't work. The idea is that your code can make sure that all the functions work even before it starts doing anything useful. Let's read what Mr. Computer Scientist has to say about it. It is a common best practice to include automatic unit testing of source code. Unit testing provides a way to automatically verify that the functions are working properly. It makes it possible to change the implementation of a function at a later time and then very quickly test that it does what it was supposed to do. So unit testing forces the programmer to think about the different cases that the function needs to handle. You only have to type the test once into the script. And that way you don't have to keep running the program over and over with test data to make sure it works. You've written your test, and then you can just run that once. A collection of tests is sometimes called a test suite, but we're just going to call it our unit tests. We have three functions to test here. So I'm going to say A is equal to the cube value of 10. No, I'm not. The cube value of 2. Now, what is the cube of 2? What does cube mean? It means 2 times 2 times 2, right? So what should A equal after we call that function?
16.
2 times 2 times 2. 2 makes it 4, actually 8. Yeah. So after we call it, let's test our result. If A is equal to 8, if A is not equal to 8, then we know we got it wrong. Print cube function let's be even more specific. Cube 2 returned, and then we're going to put A so that we will show what it actually returned. We could make this more detailed. We could say we were expecting an 8. All right, now we're going to test the add function. I'm going to stop indenting. B is equal to adding the value of 10 and 20. Now if we add 10 and 20, what should be equal? 30. Yeah, so if B is not equal to 30, then print add 10 comma 20 returned comma B. We're going to print out what it returned, and then we're going to print out what it should return. It should return 30. And then lastly, I'm going to test the minus function. C is equal to minus, we're going to subtract, I love that word minus, it's so grade school, 150. So what happens when we subtract 50 from 100? What should the result be? I know it's trivial, but tell me anyways. Yeah, 50 from 100 is 50. So what is my statement going to look like? What's my test going to look like? I want to check to make sure C is 50, so what am I going to type?
If C is not equal.
Yeah, if C is not equal to 50, colon. Hey, mine's doing the same thing yours is now. When I hit tab, it goes over 16 places rather than 8, or 8 rather than 4. Anyways, print minus 100 comma 50 returned comma C. Print it should return 50. And now we need to call our unit test function. So at the very bottom in main, I'm going to make a call to unit test. Now, since I'm expecting the add function to work, I'm not going to get that error message, but I should get the function about cube and minus. And instead, I get an error. Okay, I forgot a quote on one of my lines. Maybe you didn't. I forgot to put an end quote on it should return 30. Okay, so indeed I did get 2 error messages. It said cube return 2, it should return 8. And minus 50 comma 100 comma 50 returned 150, it should return 50. So if your functions are returning values and you can predict what values they're supposed to return, which you ought to be able to do, right? Because these are computers, they're supposed to do the same thing every time. They don't, as you know, when your computer crashes or sometimes the printer works and sometimes it doesn't, but it's supposed to work every time. We could add some more code onto our unit test, like to count the number of errors. And if there were no errors, then print it's all good. Something like that. Or we could just make these if, else, ifs to accomplish the same thing. But I think for the idea of unit testing as is now, I'm going to leave that alone. Okay. So now that you have this code, run it, make sure it prints 2 errors, and then go up and correct the cube function. Don't make it just say x times x, make it say x times x times x. And then run it again. And when you get the cube function working, modify the minus function. I'll do the split code screen again so we get it all on one page. does that make sense? It should be called a function test, right? They call it a unit test just because we're testing each unit of code separately. Let me go back here. So Q return 2 is unit, minus return 150 should return 50, so that's fine. Fixing to the Q function of the minus function. Don't fix the expected return, it's actually the fault of the function. Because minus adding the values kind of pretty much a good view.
It was supposed to come out somewhere.
Right, it didn't because I didn't roll for it.
You fix the problem with the minus function, now there's a problem with the Q function.
Oh, that's fine.
Unit test.
One problem is I'm making it easier to fix it. So that's one piece to fix, but that's not the only problem then. But you can run it anyways, see how much closer we are. You don't have a colon. No. You don't have an if statement. You need your if statement. You need your C is line equal to, put that after your colon. You calculate C here, so the very next line needs to be if. Okay, so have you calculated Q looks like it was Q squaring is when you multiply something by itself, cubing is when you multiply something by itself by itself.
Q2 return 2.
Well, we can use a function for it, but let's just do another x.
Except we got 2 error messages, right? Here,
You know, we could use those, at the act of double asterisks.
I spaced mine out. The exclamation point? Yeah, I did that and corrected one of my codes.
Okay, that means that you, put
Don't
the
have to
call
space it
right
out, or just
after it
the
goes
A
south
and
or something like that. Show me
together.
the drawbar.
It won't.
So you have to-
But put Leo right,
I'll do, is that?
do that after it
is
goes north
power
and
like
west, because we want to put it at the top, so we want to go
Yeah.
from the north and the west, so after that. Yep.
Q2 return 2 should return 8.
It shouldn't return anything. That should be accurate.
Okay. I think we had a 3 in there, dude.
It's good.
Let me see.
Mystery syntax error. You're right.
Well, it's not really syntax, but it's not system that.
Okay, it's stare at the function and figure out what cube should do. And there's actually 2 problems in it, not just one. It's my mistake up there probably. Yeah, when I
Spaced
made
out.
return X.
After the commas too. It might not make a difference.
And then returning X.
But it might.
We should return the result. That's the first problem. And the other one is X is square. You multiply something by itself. How do you calculate a cube? Yeah, sure.
On 29.
Okay, my function cube is really broken. It's got 2 problems, not one. One is in this calculation of result. But the other one is return X. Why am I returning X? What did I just calculate? I calculated result, so what should I be doing? I should return result. That's the first of the 2 problems with the cube function. Sorry about that. I meant for there to only be 1 problem, but heck, it's extra debugging.
Now it's up to 8.
Q2 return 4.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's okay.
We didn't print anything if they're right, so that's good. When you run it and it produces no output, it actually means it's all good.
Main unit test.
Yeah.
Unit test.
It's actually asterisk, asterisk.
Y22.
So just put the number here, put it like that. There, it passed all the tests, so it didn't print any errors.
Unit test, C minus.
Let's fix. that? If you run it and you don't see anything, then what does that mean?
Everything.
It means all the tests passed, so we didn't print any error messages. It's actually a good thing.
What?
Okay, so I'm gonna add an else or pass, so I can actually tell you.
Well, you could do that, but then that would only work for the last one.
This is not the function.
If you want to make something that would print all tests passed, do something like this. Errors equals 0. Each time you get an error, errors plus equals 1. And then at the very end, put one more if statement that says if errors is equal to 0, then print all tests passed. That make sense? Okay. So if you want to do that, if you want to make it print a message that it successfully passed all tests, add that line. I'm highlighting them with red marks, hashtags. That one, that one, that one, that one, and that one. And you don't only have to put one test on here. You know, maybe you need to test the function 3 or 4 different times. Maybe we don't trust, because what if we did a cube of 1 and it returned 1? Yay, it passed that test. But that's because 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 is always 1. So there could still be a problem. We just did not test it adequately. Then we want to maybe try it with 2 and then maybe with 3. We all good? You get syntax errors? All right, guys, that's really the last topic I wanted to cover. What is a function called that returns a value, according to them? Think fruit basket. It's a fruitful function. It's returning something. What's a function that doesn't return a value? It's a void function. Unit test here is a void function. It didn't return anything. We could make it return something. We could make it return the number of errors. So these are fruitful functions because they do something and then they calculate something and they return a result. It'd be fun to flowchart this entire thing, but that would take 10 minutes, and I don't really think that we ought to do that. So look, 142. Alrighty. Why not just upload that into the bar chart program as well? So the bar graph Dropbox as well. I'm going to change the name of bar graph to bar graph and unit test.
I did errors or equals plus 1, errors equals plus 1, and then up here the con errors is equal to 0. So under errors equals 0, and define it as 0. Yeah. 1 equals
Well, you have to put errors equals 0 at the top, so you have that variable
as long as you got one
reference.
way or the other, keep it.
And then in each unit test, if it fails, so you have to add 1 to it. So.
Was it up there? Was it? Oh, yeah, I just
Yeah,
missed it. Yep.
It's hard to find stuff after you have it.
And once you get it uploaded, I'll see you all next Monday. If you have questions over your flowcharts, text or call, or let's talk about them on Monday.
You wanted to upload under bar graph, correct?
Yeah,
Along with the bar graph?
right. I'm going to change the name of it to bar graph and unit test.
Okay.
Is it early? We should try chiller. I tried that one too.
See you later.
See ya.
How do I find?
Common sense is key word.
I can't find it. I just did it off
You'll get full credit for the day anyways, so don't stress overly. But it'd be nice if you could find it just in case you ever wanted to download it for your own purposes.
Yeah, I saved it on the desktop instead of the in-class assignment. Cause I had nothing for it.
I told you that earlier.
Shut up. We're supposed to finish.
Yeah.
I wasn't here today, I was on Monday, I was just wondering if you were gonna put, the videos up on.
Yep. Monday video's already been uploaded. Today's video should be uploaded by the end of the day.
Alright, sorry, I was kidding.
It's okay.
So, like, that'll be on there, so I can.
Hey, you
look
gonna
on
Yep.
it, and then I was gonna did something with the usage,
Do
but
like
I
that
haven't
chick
seen
did?
it on that.
Right, you'll just have to watch the video, and the video walks you through creating the Elucid Chart account, and then you see the program.
I can catch it.
Sure.
So I resubmitted the ASCII chart,
Cool.
several times, and I don't know, I think there's no error on it this time, so,
Okay.
I think my computer at home.
Okay, so I'll look at it. You may not get full credit for it just because when I say more credit, I don't necessarily mean full credit. I'll look to
Well, I
see at
turned
the
it in on
comment.
time, and
Okay.
it was a.
And then you
corrupted
corrected it.
file.
Okay, then you'll
Yeah,
get full
I
credit.
had to redo everything, it was stupid.
Okay,
So-
you'll get credit for it. Thanks for letting me know. Yes, sir.
Okay, so on last week's assignment with the graph paper, I didn't quite understand what you had to do on the graph paper itself.
Oh, the graph paper was just for help. I just want you to draw a smiley.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was like
Yeah.
bar graph? Or not
Yeah,
bar
don't
graph,
have to do
but-
anything with the
okay,
graph
yeah.
paper. I think I just put it
So
there.
that threw
Somebody
me
went.
off. I was like,
Yeah.
does you want a paper copy too? Or?
Nah. Sorry about that.
You're fine, no problem.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah.
Have a good one.
You too.